Namo Amida Boo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, in whichever realms of existence you are, whatever mind states you're in, whatever conditions you find yourself in. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my little discussions of my experience as an Orthodox Jodo Shinshu follower. Wanted to talk about today was my calculating mind in so many ways. Anyway, I'll get into that. But one of the things I've realized, I've been realizing things since my experience of several months ago, back in the summer, when I realized I didn't have Shinjin, after having very deeply convinced myself that I had, because I wasn't honest with myself or about my doubts and questions, and also wasn't honest. If I wasn't honest with myself, I wasn't honest with others about that either, including my sensei and close Dharma brother and other Dharma brothers, closer Dharma brothers, and with the Sangha. So yeah, I messed that up big time. And I realize that's partly due to my calculating mind. Besides the emotional reasons of desperation and frustration and impatience and just wanting Shinjin so badly that I convinced myself I had been given Shinjin, or that I had Shinjin. But anyway, one of the reasons I think has to do with my calculating mind. I wound up with what I essentially wound up with was a false, as Josho Sensei refers to. I wound up with a false, an intellectual Shinjin, something along that line. He's referred to it as, because obviously it hadn't come from Amida, so it was false, and it obviously hadn't penetrated my heart. It was just in my head, me in my head. I'm not disavowing that Amida works in my life, or has been working in my life for a long time, actually, in this lifetime and in previous lifetimes. And that there is a work of Amida at work in my heart and in my mind and in my life through his light. And I'm not denying that I've been open to a certain amount to that light. But as far as Shinjin, me making up to myself that I had Shinjin, that was pretty much because of my calculating mind. Understanding the teachings with my head, understanding how it works with my head, and then therefore making myself believe with my head that I had been given Shinjin when I had not. I was making myself believe and making believe that I had Shinjin without even knowing it. Without even knowing that I was making believe, I had made myself believe and was making believe that I had Shinjin, and I didn't. So the reason I was making believe with others is because I had made myself believe it. So of course I'm going to project that outwardly. It wasn't something I did consciously or on purpose. I didn't fake it. I wasn't faking it. Wasn't faking it till I make it type of thing. Although there might have been some of that in there with the false and intellectual Shinjin calculating mind. But the some of the faking it till you make it in there, not some of the being deceptive on purpose. That I was definitely not being deceptive or making believe on purpose or consciously. I was not consciously making believe I had Shinjin. I was not consciously pretending I had it. I really believed I had it. So therefore, it was false. So, and it was my, I realized that, that was a big part of it. That phrase that Josho Sensei uses, of a false and intellectual Shinjin, it definitely applies to me. It applies to my, and whenever I would hear that in his books or recordings of his works, when I was deeply listening, I would and whenever I would hear that in the back of my mind, I would think, there's a part of me that was, that unconscious part of me that kind of went, there was a part of me that still, even though I had really convinced myself, there was a part of me that was like, I wonder if that's referring to me. There was some of the truth getting through to me about what I was doing, but it took a while for that to come to, for me to realize it. But so yeah, it was me. It was me, my calculating mind. Kind of part of that was I knew the teachings intellectually in my mind, with my mind. I understand the teachings and kind of the basics and how it works, and probably a good bit beyond just the basics, and put that together in my calculating mind and convince myself I had Shinjin. And I realized too, another aspect of me and my whole journey with Shinjin has been my calculating mind. I have a very strong mind. I have a pretty good mind, let's just say. And for understanding certain things, and and I've developed my mind through education. I've been to university. I have a degree, and after university, I continue to develop my mind with reading in various ways. So, but which most people think, oh, that's a good thing, and it is to a degree. It is actually, but when it comes to Buddhism, and it comes to Shinjin, when it comes to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism specifically, it can be a hindrance, because that calculating mind wants to I want to figure everything out. And I think part of me has always been not just accepting the teachings, but in my mind trying to figure out, okay, how does it exactly work? How does Amida's light exactly work? How does the light emanate, and how does that penetrate your mind and your heart, and how does the with the transference of Amida's incalculable store of merit to us, how does that work? And on and on and on. I was always trying to really understand things that the teachings themselves tell us are not understandable. I was trying, very, very hard to understand things that the teachings and the Dharma masters refer to, and I think even, I won't say that, I was going to say the sutras, but I don't know if the sutra actually says it, inconceivable probably does actually. Probably does. I can't remember offhand. I do apologize, but at least the Dharma masters use the word inconceivable working of Amida, the inconceivable working of the vow, all that stuff. But I was still trying to conceive it. I was still trying to understand it with my limited mind, my limited capacity, my limited understanding, my bamboo mind, my monkey mind. I was still trying to, my unenlightened, ignorant mind, which is completely deluded and completely full of, is tainted with, attachments, aversions, blind passions, obscurations, and all sorts. But I still think, I can figure it out. Because that's what I've done with pretty much everything else in life. That was part of my, I've talked about being my modus operandi is being a survivor, and I've done that pretty well, actually. And that is, being a survivor, figuring out what's happening, where this is going, what am I doing, figuring out what people are up to, figuring out, how to do things, to preserve myself, all this kind of stuff. So, that's in there too. My calculating mind was hard at work with those kinds of things. And, even in self-power Buddhism, it's not necessarily the calculating mind, but you're meant to use your mind. You're meant to, you're meant to use your mind and your actions and everything to explore the teachings, to verify the teachings, to verify things for yourself, not just sort of accept them or sort of. You're meant to experience and you use your mind to an extent to investigate the teachings and to verify them. Obviously, you have to do that with your actions, so you get results, that sort of thing as well. But anyway, so even at least that's my understanding. I could be totally wrong about my interpretation there. So that's just my understanding. In my understanding or limited understanding, that seems like that's what self-power Buddhism is. That you need to use your mind. So I had that with me as well, coming into and learning about Jodo Shinshu. I had those habits, that way of sort of thinking. So that's more, but again, it was my, I distort things with my calculating mind. I convince myself of things, obviously, with my calculating mind. And I question things. Now, this is the other aspect of the calculating mind, is how many, this comes to my doubts and my doubts and questions. Coming from a Western culture, not necessarily from a culture of my family. My family was not a thinking culture. It was not a people that were not really using your intellect and using your mind the way that I have in my life was not part of my family, like part of my upbringing. It really wasn't. My mother, to an extent, is fairly intelligent, actually, but she did not use her mind that way. She, so thinking critically was not part of my family upbringing. It also, to a degree, probably wasn't part of my high school. My high school years, definitely not my grade school years and my school, my high school years. It wasn't real. To a degree, there was some things that touched on critical thought, critical thinking. But it wasn't until I got to university that I really was like, yeah, this is, and I, it was like a confirmation of how I was already thinking in terms of, trying to be rational, trying to think critically, trying questioning things, and that's valued in the West. That's a value, thinking critically, thinking rationally, thinking, being skeptical. These are all valued in Western cultures. In some circles in Western cultures, let's put it that way. In some aspects of Western culture, at least in academia and the sciences and the arts, to a degree, philosophy. Anyway, and especially, anyway, I won't go any further into that. But I was already questioning things and thinking in that way in high school. So when I got to university, and obviously, because I was a thinker in high school and questioning things and my mind, thinking critically, it kind of that caused me problems with peers and adults and everyone else and teachers, and because I questioned things that I was not supposed to be questioning. I kind of already had that. And then when going to university, then that was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. And so it, so that reinforced, so getting to university reinforced that kind of critical thinking, rational, skeptical thinking that I already had, and it just reinforced it and further developed it. So that's always been there with me, and has made it, even it made me even just question with self-power Buddhism, aspects of self-power Buddhism, and have doubts and questions about that, and then, even more so, it caused me even more difficulties when it comes to Pure Land Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, because I just have that. I have that left over from all those years ago. That's still with me. All that calculating mind, and the thing is there's such an arrogance to it, isn't there? There's such an arrogance to thinking that I can somehow I'll go this way anyway. Somehow, yes, I'll go this way. That I can somehow, figure everything in the universe out, which is what I always was trying to do. I was always trying to figure out, it was like I wasn't just trying to figure things out around me. I was always trying to figure out the universe and and try to make it all make sense. From high school years, I was always trying to figure it out. And there's that delusion and ignorance and arrogance that I could do that I could somehow do that. And there's times where I just on my own came to that conclusion, like that's really arrogant. It's really ridiculous that I'm trying to figure this out with my limited mind. It's just ridiculous that anybody is trying to figure these things out or trying to understand these things with their limited minds. And then I realized, oh yeah, that's right. That's what Buddhism says. So it's pretty major arrogance involved there. With all that, no, I don't think I will go that way because it's anyway. It's going to take me further out of the way than I wanted to go. So it's just I've had that from high school onward till today. Where I still was trying to figure it out, trying to understand it all, the whole huge big picture, like I could ever do that. but my mind still thinks, still grasps, my monkey mind, my monkeys, the monkeys, my monkey mind still grasping to try to understand it all and put it all in perspective and get the right truth, the exact right truth, and yada yada yada. Like I could do that, like with my limited, ignorant, deluded mind. But yet it's just so habituated. That way of, that modus operandi is so habituated in me so strongly. And that's part of the calculating mind for me, which is just so ridiculous. It's outrageous is what it is. It's completely outrageous and ridiculous to think that way, and to think that I could figure all this stuff out. But again, that's part of what has, and that's really messed up and complicated and thwarted and made winding my path to and through Jodo Shinshu for this past 13 to 15 years. It's a huge aspect of it, and this is another thing. So I'm realizing now, with all the reflecting I've done this past several months on all this, and just to see what happened, to make some sense of it. There I go again. But anyway, I realized that this aspect of my calculating mind and my monkey mind is what made me have, including this time, at least 3 times, a false intellectual Shinjin. Made me think that I had Shinjin through my own calculation, because I understood in the head, and even in previous times I understood the head. Each one I understood with the head even more each time. So it was a stronger, illusion that I, self-delusion. It was a stronger self-deception each time, because I understood things even more with my head each time. But it hadn't completely penetrated the heart. I think to a degree aspects of the teaching have. I think to a degree Amita's light has penetrated. Of course it's penetrated. It goes everywhere, obviously. But I mean, as far as my deep listening process, I think it has to some degree, over the years, very gradually penetrated the heart, but not fully, not in the way that the deep listening. I need to do the deep listening. I really need to understand it with the heart, like Paul Roberts says. After understanding with the head, I really needs to take it inside, take it in the heart, and stop thinking too much about it, and stop trying to figure it all out in my arrogant, calculating way. And try to remember. I always try to remember that skepticism. My skeptic mind, the so-called skeptic mind, the so-called rational mind, the so-called critical thought is BS. That's BS. It's another thing I convinced myself of that I could do, that I can do effectively, and it has its purposes. And it does on a smaller level, function in certain ways, and on a surface level, it does help. It has helped me. Which is why it's why it's become so strong in me. It was part of my survival mechanism too. was part of my survival mechanism. It was part of my all that habituated survivalism, survival approach to life, survivor approach to life. It very much was, and so that it's a tough one, and that's all me. It's all me. It's all my karmic causes and conditions that made me that way. But it's one of those things I just have to remember how arrogant that is when I for some of the questions I have. It's because of that. It's because of that skeptical, that so-called quote unquote, it's not a real skeptical mind. The real skepticism is what the Dharma masters do. The Dharma masters are the real, I'm talking about the sage, the self-power and other power, Dharmic masters. I'm getting in the weeds here. I won't go down that way. I'm getting in the weeds here with my calculating mind. There you go. Perfect example of me trying to figure things out. Anyway, there is a degree. What I'm trying to say is that the teachings of Buddhism the Buddha is the true skeptic, of helping us understand, skeptical not of the Buddhist teachings, not of the truth, but of samsara, which blocks the truth. Skepticism about this reality. Skepticism about, that's the real skepticism. That's the real good skepticism, is questioning this reality, questioning the merits of this reality, of samsaric existence, of egoic consciousness. That's the real challenge. That's the real good skepticism. But anyway, I use it for all sorts of things, and it's not helpful. It definitely is. It's not helpful. It is a block. It's definitely a block on the path for me. It is definitely a stumbling block. It is definitely an obstacle. I know there's no obstacles to Amita's light. There's no obstacles to Amita's power. There's no obstacles to his vow. There's no obstacles to other power. It's an obstacle for me, within me. It's an obstacle to my deep listening. It's an obstacle to my working with a Dharma guide. It's an obstacle to my entrusting. It's an obstacle that I create, that I put in my own way. There's nothing in Amita's way. There's nothing in Amita's way. I can see that and know that with my mind, and to some degree I know it. There's many times throughout every day where I know it in my heart, but it's not constant. So anyway, bloody calculating, freaking ignorant, wretch, evil mind, man. It is a biatch. It is a biatch, let me tell you. So I think that's about it on that happy note. But at least I'm staying on the path. I am not leaving the path. I have made that decision. No matter what, I'm remaining on the Orthodox Jodo Shinshu path. I am remaining on that path. I am continuing to do what the teachings tell me to do. I am continuing to do what I need to do, in that sense. And either I'll die, and either I'll at some point through Amida's power have Shinjin, or I won't. But either way, I'm going to die a Jodo Shinshu follower. It's that simple. So anything else is is out of the question now. Even when my monkey mind, calculating monkey mind, wants to throw, oh, look at this. Oh, what about this kind of Buddhism? What about this teaching in Buddhism? What about, even when it's trying to, or what about this thing over here in Taoism? That's similar to Buddhism. So I'm getting to the point where, almost getting to the point where I'm ignoring them. I'm just letting them go. Yep, fine, whatever. Change the focus to Amida. Fine, whatever. Yeah, whatever you want to think, whatever you want to say, whatever you're trying to tell me. Great. Yeah, whatever. I'll just focus. Just change the focus to Amida. That's my new way of life. Change the focus to Amida. Anyway, thanks very much for listening again, and Namo Amida Bu.